1,200 units attacking, with the physics using only 20% of a single processor core, and it's all made in Godot. I started by struggling with the physics of 100 robots to making this. My plan was to make a real-time strategy game with less micromanagement and fights, more economic management, and limits to sustain. I started without knowing how to use Godot, Blender, or having any game development experience. I had only one idea. The robots would attack the player, the power reserves would be depleted. Can the player hang on? I figured out everything else as I went along. This is the story of what I learned in making this game. My first big milestone was making the power grid. The trucks are delivering fuel to the power plant to power the lamps, which are stand-in for towers, and recharge the batteries. When the generation capacity is overwhelmed, the battery power is drawn. When the battery is empty, the lights go off. I later redid all of the models, but the underlying code of the power simulation is the same. I made nearly all the models in Blender myself. They only improved as I got better in Blender later in development. In many making of videos, the developer already knows how to use the engine and already has assets. The lesson here is this is what games actually look like early in development. My next idea was to have a truck management system for gathering resources, much like Warcraft or Starcraft, which uses workers. But it turned out too much like a spreadsheet and not that fun. I also learned the reasons why in those games collision detection is turned off for the workers, since going from point A to point B is often the same path as point B to point A. I tried various techniques for movement, including flocking, until I decided to use formations and collision avoidance. I learned that in game development, ideas would often have to be iterated several times before finding something that works. It was now time to work on the robots. For them, I decided to implement StarCraft 2 style flocking after watching that famous GDC video. But I hit a wall, as Godot has a hard time with thousands of physics objects. I learned I had to implement the physics myself, and use a multi-mesh for rendering, which limits animation options, but allows for thousands of units to be rendered smoothly. This is map 15, there are around 2,000 robots. Turning on the stats, if you look at the top left, as in microseconds per second, so the game physics core is running at around 10%. The trick here is that the heavy computation, such as aggroing, collision detection, and flocking, does not need to be done every frame, and it can still be smooth, running a varied amount of frames depending on the situation. All the robots in the map are active, as you can see by the scouts pushing the slower units around and units being aggroed. To reduce the micromanagement in fights, I made a streamlined combat system. This is what it looked like originally. Let's show you with the current graphics. There is basic laser damage, anti-shield damage, slow which does a sweep, fire for high hit point units, and multi-shot. All of them aim at the most favorable targets so the player does not need to micro them. There are also hero units, the engineering vehicle summon decoys for aggro, an artillery tank, and a cannonball tank, which is like having a shotgun. The hero units get upgrades. There are several different decoys, artillery shells, and cannonball types. I did have to spend some time theory crafting the system. I learned not to overthink and just combine some of my favorite mechanics from other games. Next up was the economic system. I learned to stick to the original vision of having an economic focused game, and that led to the idea that the player has to go out and capture large parts of the map and then keep control of them to gather resources. I decided to have 2 harvestable resources, one for energy and the other for building material, 4 types of power plants. One is a backup generator that uses a collectible resource, an ethanol plant that uses to harvest corn, geothermal, which uses geothermal springs, and nuclear that uses crystals from trees. The upgrade buildings are not buildings, instead they are trees, which seeds have to be gathered, made into seedlings, planted, watered, and fruit gathered. They can also be upgraded with experience, which is knowledge gathered by the engineering vehicle in fights, and also from the tree of knowledge. There are 2 mineable resources, one for upgrading batteries, and the other for upgrading trees, which the upgraded fruit can be used to upgrade weapons. I was now ready to work on the AI. My first idea was having AI behavior that is adjustable in terms of its behavior, such as aggression, how it attacks the player, and expansion, and how it builds up on the map. I spent far too long on this, and what I learned in hindsight is to wait until I start making maps, to see how the game plays and work on it then. As a spoiler, I figured out that the key is to keep the AI behavior simple, but make the maps interesting. I thought about using a tile editor. Godot has one called Terrain 3D, but it computes the tiles in real time and is a bit too computationally intense for low-end computers, which I wanted the game to work on. So I decided instead to use 2K textures from Ambient CG. I also made prompts as dividers, and one nice effect I was able to add to both them and the terrain is that they go from brown to green as a player progresses on the map, and they're also glow in the dark. Now I was ready to make maps. However, they ended up similar in a bunch of resource fetch quests, areas to tower, and then obtain enough resources to win the game. I came to the realization that I needed more. The robots need to be able to push back. Aggro a base, they can send help. Destroy their bases, they can rebuild. But I ran into the problem that after the player sets up enough towers, the area is secure. I then made the hammer units, which bypass towers to attack the power plant, shutting them down. This forces a player to respond as the battery reserve will get drained in time. This is a good thing since having more large fights is always fun. I do not want the game to be stuck in having towers do all the defense, and the only large fights are the base sieges. I then realized I needed a way to take out towers themselves, so I made the Jacob's Ladder robot, which disables nearby towers. In this game, buildings and vehicles are only disabled, never destroyed. However, if the robots rebuild in this place, they now have a dampening field, and the buildings cannot be re-enabled until the new base is destroyed. With these mechanics, I was able to make this map. The map starts with a few thousand robots, and most of the battle is going to take place in the middle. The player starts by gathering resources, but soon has to expand in the middle, and almost immediately gets attacked by neighboring bases. It is a race to see if the player can get the towers up in time. At this point, only a small portion of the middle is taken. While the fighting is going on, the player still needs to manage the economy. The player opens up an area to the left of the map to get more harvestable resources, and has to rush back to the middle again to fight, and revive some of their buildings. The robots have taken back the left harvestable area, disabling the harvesters, which is getting towed back. And here comes the army to take back the area. The player opens up the left area in the middle to obtain more resources to upgrade, and the robots send help, forcing the player back to recharge. Afterwards, the player is able to take the area and builds up with towers, mines, and power plants. The player now controls most, but not all of the middle, and has obtained enough upgrades and new weapons to take on the bottom right upgrade area, which has strong defenses. The player now controls most of the middle, and obtain all the upgrade trees to the bottom right. They are ready to take on the main boss bases. First, they attack the outer defenses, which receive help, and the player has to go back to recharge, while the player's base is getting attacked again. The player comes back. The base rebuilt some of the defenses, but not enough. The player has enough power to take out the base. With one last set of upgraded weapons, the player can take on the main base. When I completed this map, I realized that I finally learned how to make maps properly. I had to go back and improve all the earlier maps to make sure the robots are always pushing back. It was quite the journey from implementing the power grid to this. As much as YouTube tutorials helped me along the way, I really only learned the lessons of game development by making this game. I decided to document this in a video series which showed this game being developed step by step with all the missteps and iterative improvement. So stay tuned, there are many more videos to come. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.